All right. I don't see Barney quite yet, but I see a number of our TAP folks, lots of committee members. Thank you for joining us. And then of course, Bill, do you want to get us started?
Glad to. Welcome everyone. Good morning. And for most of you, I haven't seen you since the new year. So happy new year. Certainly 2021 will be an improvement on 2020. And we're looking forward to having great technology solutions. Cheryl, why don't you see if we have new members to introduce?
I just want to let you know, Bill and Cheryl, that Barney just communicated that he's running a little bit late. He'll be here ASAP.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, do we have any members that weren't with us the last time we met in, I think, September?
That'll be me.
Hi, David. You want to introduce yourself real briefly?
Sure. My name's, I'll turn on my video so you can see me. There we go. Hi, David Adler. I am a data and analytics consultant working with WED. I'm part of Alex's team.
Fantastic. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Any more new members? Otherwise, for David as well as for all of us that haven't seen each other for a while, feel free in the chat to let us know who you are, what your role is, particularly your connection to this committee and who you're working with or representing. And Joe, I was thinking the same thing. How many beards we're seeing? That's a result of not seeing everybody since last January in person and this whole online COVID thing. So yes, more beards. All right. Bill, should we do anything else or should we jump right into business?
Let's do business.
I'm all for that. Let's be efficient. So I think the first item on our agenda is the grant planning update. I think, David, you might be spearheading that.
That is for sure.
Well, could we add something to the agenda? I know that the Board of Governors has taken a look at the Participatory Governance Handbook that does discuss TTAC. Could we throw that into the agenda, particularly when Barney gets here?
Yeah, I think we can definitely make a note of that and include it at some point.
And Barney's joining right now. His audio is connected.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay. Should we go ahead and get started on grant planning?
Yeah, thanks, David.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody. My name is, for those of you I haven't met, my name is David Kendall. I work for Barney Gomez as DII TAP PM and team lead. I get to clean up after all the bottles and messes on the table. So here we are. For the third year, we are going to be beginning our Edtech portfolio grant planning process. This is an intended planning effort to align Chancellor's Office leadership expectations with the work efforts that are executed by the grantees and solution providers. The first year, we threw this idea out to cut some bureaucracy and stay focused on work plans and activities. Each year, we've learned a lot. The second year, we were able to focus on how to communicate specific artifacts throughout the year. And this year, we're going to work on, in our collaboration discussions, talking about the priorities for each of the work plans so that it's clear what effort should be done as a priority versus those that might not make the list. All of that is just to say this is a conscious effort for Chancellor's Office leadership to work directly with the grantees to come up with the best work plan, stack hands, and get the work done on an annual basis. The reason I listed out the prioritization of grants, we've proposed that we go down the list in this order, primarily because of leadership feedback and the work that's been done during this fiscal year to date. Those shift and adjust from a schedule perspective based on who's available and when we can get together. As you can imagine, coordinating leadership calendars across multiple organizations can be a challenge. So the execution is expected to start, that we started this month actually. Our internal team has gotten together, talked about our lessons learned for the past couple of years, our standard artifacts that we use, the approach, and we expect to be executing our first meeting, could be as early as this week, depending on a few people confirming that. What this looks like is the Chancellor's Office leadership and staff get together, talk about the grant, what the purpose of the grant was, the work that's been done from the previous or now current fiscal year, and what objectives and activities they would like to see for the coming fiscal year. That internal planning meeting has been incredibly helpful because it allows questions and answers before we get together with the grantees and the solution providers, which makes it a lot more efficient once we get together as a full team. The next thing is the grantees and solution providers prepare their recommendations as they've done since the beginning of the grants that are included in the Edtech portfolio. We get everybody together, talk through what's been done, what is expected for the next year, and then our DII TAP team monitors progress in conjunction with the grant monitors and DI management and staff to make sure that we're meeting the expectations. And each year we get better and better at tracking the work done to date. And thank you to those that are on this call who have participated in that process. It's been very helpful in communicating and having the Chancellor's Office participate effectively. Questions or comments?
Is the loss of the library technology grant part of what you're working on, getting that back?
That'd probably be a
No, it wouldn't be at this point. It wouldn't be at this point, Bill. Right now, I know that the CCLC, along with Greg and the Council of Chief Librarians, they've established a 3-year program for the library services effort right now going forward. So I think, at some point we will try to, I have to talk to Lizette as well too, but at some point we're going to try and loop that back into our advocacy efforts with the Department of Finance and the legislature to continue to, get that money going forward.
Would it be appropriate for this body to take an advocacy position for that work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, any kind of advocacy is always going to be, a worthwhile venture. So, anything we can do to, continue to make go forward with that. That would be for next year, though, I would say, for the next budget season.
Could I entertain a motion from the group to support that advocacy to restore state funding for the library grant?
So moved. Second, Robert.
Is there discussion?
And just for clarification, I heard Tim with a motion, Tim Killingstad, and Robert Stewart Jr. as a second.
Correct.
I would also defer to Greg to see what he has. He wants to chime in as well too.
Sure. Thanks for that idea, Bill. The League and the Council of Chief Librarians have in fact established an operating consortium to manage the library services platform program for this year, because the contract with the Chancellor's Office expired December 31st. We negotiated a new contract between the League and the vendor. That is a 3-year contract, but it does have a section in it which allows the League to transfer the contract to another entity, especially one that has state funding. The League is already had one conversation with the Department of Finance about various budget priorities, but I know that one of them was the full funding of this effort in the next fiscal budget. So any additional support along those lines would be, well, I'm quite sure.
Okay, is there any further comment? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Bill, hang on just a second, please.
Okay, sure.
Greg, did they put into the contract that these items were going to be accessible now?
Absolutely. I want you all to know that we compared accessibility clauses at CSU, UC, out-of-state places like Harvard. We have what we feel is the toughest. It's not the most perfect, but the toughest set of accessibility standards in any existing contract in the United States with a library vendor. It was damn
Thank
hard work, but it's there. It can be improved, and we built in a little opportunity to keep slamming them, to be polite, about this, and so it's there.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Are there further questions on this agenda item? If not, I'll ask one. How are we doing on Zoom? It seems like we're all addicted to Zoom.
I think Rico should tell us some statistics. He's been reporting some pretty interesting information.
Sure. Let me tell you some of what were just some of the statistics in terms of Zoom. We're actually just past the 8 million classes and meeting mark. So since COVID started on Zoom for the California Community College system, this is actually a kudos to everyone in the system for just jumping on and taking the, as they say, the bull by the horns and making it successful. 8 million, over 8 million, I'm sorry, 80 million meetings, 80 million meetings. That's a lot. That's a lot of meetings. Right now we're approaching, exhausting pretty much 1 petabyte of storage on the Zoom cloud. Just impressive numbers. We're trying to get actually people to record a little less because we're running out of space, but it's still impressive that instructors are just recording meetings for their students so that the students can view them later. It helps them with exams. It helps them with a lot of stuff. I won't get into pedagogy or anything like that, but that's just some of the numbers. Where basically in some weeks we have 10 terabytes of data a week that we're putting on our cloud. So those are just some of the numbers. And like I said, it's kudos to the entire California Community College system for making this a reality, this Zoom product. And I know that there was a lot of, there's some issues with it every once in a while, but just so everyone knows in this meeting that Otter is supposed to be released today. So Otter is it's not 100% accessible. I know, Tim, you're probably gonna you're probably gonna say something negative about it, but it is something that is available for the Zoom meetings. Will be available, and it provides for an ASR solution, and then an instructor can go in there and edit that file that it creates to make it more accessible. But I think that's good enough for me right now.
Actually, if I can speak to that, it's still one of the better products. It's still one of the best products in the venue. So I am not speaking against it and would not at this point.
Oh, good.
I am curious, is that a system-wide license to be used with Zoom?
Actually, it comes with the product. It's just not for us. It's going to be incorporated into Zoom itself. They're not calling Otter out because they don't want to confuse. They still want Otter to be able to sell their product as a standalone. But it is going to be available for every Zoom meeting, and we'll be sending out some documentation to everyone as soon as we receive it about what you need to do to turn it on.
Excellent. I know people that will be very encouraged by that.
Yeah,
Rico, I was going to say, Rico, with respect to Otter, before we release anything, let's collaborate on that. And when the information gets out, let's have a touch point on that one before we set anything out. And then lastly, with respect to the policy or the recordings and the disk space, the space that we're running out of, or we're getting close to, or at some point we will. Regardless of where we're at, I think we need to probably look at a potential policy for retaining this information and how long. Because at some point, like you said, based on the email that you sent me and the fact that we need to get together and figure out what we're going to do, we either A, need to basically come up with a policy, a retention policy that says we're going to keep recordings for a certain amount of time, because we can't keep continuing to add to this, because you're right. It's going to basically get to a point where we're going to run out of room. And of course, they can always give us more room, but at some point, we have to come up with a policy that says, okay, you know, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, what have you, we can't keep, you know, adding to that, the amount of storage space that we're already paying for and that we're already getting with the existing contract. I saw your numbers that you gave me. If we decide to increase that, I don't know that we have any more money to basically keep throwing at this. So at some point, I think we need to really have a serious discussion around the policy in terms of keeping recordings out there.
Yeah, totally agree 100%, Barney. And we'll try to set something up for next week, because at this point, we're going to be running out of storage sooner rather than later. Yeah.
Yep. So Bill and Cheryl,
on a legal status, isn't this subject to the Freedom of Information Act for disclosure?
I'm not sure. Well, that's something we can definitely address.
Our attorney said so. We're doing a policy right now to have treat it like a document, have a document retention plan. We should have a digital record plan to sunset those recordings.
And that's exactly what I'm getting at, is a retention policy for how long we're going to keep this information out there. Because, like, as Rico indicated, we only have so much storage capability with respect to this. And with the amount of calls that are going on and the recordings that are taking place, we're getting to that point where we're starting to use up a lot of disk space. And we already have quite a bit of disk space already allocated for the recording. But at some point, we have to basically, as a system, and because we're paying for it for the system, the Chancellor's office is going to need to basically put out a policy that says a retention policy for the recording. And I'm also of the opinion that if the colleges themselves want to take it and move it, down to their local level, by all means they could do so. But at some point we have to say, okay, we're going to start removing this information after a certain period of time.
Well, we've talked about this a bunch of times. This is Joe from Foothill Dianza, and I think my perception of what people in our state are doing is they're utilizing the cloud storage when it would be just as easy or appropriate for them to utilize local storage. And if we could clarify that use case, then we could probably take a humongous load off of Rico and his team in terms of maxing out our cloud storage capacity.
Totally understood. And that's where I'm going with, in terms of looking at a policy. I think what we'll do is when Rico and I get together next week, we'll figure out a strategy, and then we'll share this out with the group here in terms of where we end up, and then even with the policy, and we'll vet it amongst the TTAC leadership here.
So let me
just real quick, Cheryl, and I'll stop. One example of storage, local storage that most colleges have access to is Microsoft provides 1 terabyte of storage for each license. So that's one way we're trying to get the colleges to go towards.
Yep.
And that speaks a little bit to Suzanne's got a few comments and questions in the chat. One is it possible to parse that space by person so that we have more individual control of our accounts and are encouraged to start deleting stuff? And some of that could be transitioning into the Microsoft space. Let's see, Suzanne, you want to jump in? You've got your hand up. So
yeah, if I could, thank you. Just about so I totally understand that we need to limit storage space. I would just like to encourage the discussion to maybe focus on storage per person rather than per time, because there are some archived materials that may need to remain for longer stretches of time. Whereas when you start a meeting, a lot of times the recordings will just record, and there's a lot of wasted space. So that if we're asking faculty and other folks to consider their usage, I think that would be most effective for everybody. So just thought I'd put that out there. Thank you.
That's a good point, Suzanne.
Suzanne, would you, so right now we have also the ability to, we're moving colleges into what are called the Zoom sub-accounts. I know Foothills moved there. Joe
Mount Sac is in that too, Rico.
Yeah, and so what we're trying to do is give colleges the ability to, they would have the ability then to control, like, let's say we give them, 50 terabytes or something, then it would be up to them to decide which of that to keep on the Zoom cloud and which not to keep. So do you think that would be a viable solution?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
It really works for us because it allows faculty, if they're recording some of their Zoom presentations that they would reuse in subsequent semesters, to download and store those and make those available. It's really helpful. And I imagine there's other things, like we're also doing that in professional development areas in which we retain some of that information for future use. And having a supplemental account enables us to control that usage.
And
I'd
just
mention
one other,
folks just haven't really thought about the space that they're just recording and holding on to things. But if we were challenged to have to manage our own, either on a local level or a personal level, I think we'd all be a bit more attentive to what we keep and what we discard. And then there's that layer, Bill, as you said, of with our public meetings or public documents, what elements of these recordings, particularly the meetings related ones, must be kept versus which can be discarded much more quickly too. So I think covering both the instructional and more the management and meeting side, again, turning that into local control certainly could help make sure that we have the resources that we need as instructors or meeting deliverers, I guess you could say, when we need them.
There's also a question on chat about the requirement for two-party consent in California so that these Zoom recordings do have a notification to students when the Zoom recording is happening. We've got a legal opinion on that, don't we, Barney?
I don't recall. I'll have to go back and look, but I think we do, but don't quote me. But also Zoom, from a legal perspective, we inform everybody that the meetings are being recorded too. So everybody has the option to either opt in or opt out based on the, as the Zoom recordings take place. So I know legally, we're covered there, but in terms from a policy perspective, I think we'll cover that in the policy. These are all great points around, local control versus what the system office is going to be, doing from a policy point of view. I don't want to speak on behalf of the colleges, but I certainly can say that I agree with pushing the policy down and saying, letting the colleges determine what's important for them to keep. And if so, they want to move it, by all means, they can move it. So, again, it's going to be a little cumbersome to put together, but I think we can get it done. And, with Rico, with some of the background that we've already gotten as a result of this topic right now, I think we could basically go forward with a policy and get that out fairly quickly to share with everybody, because I'm of the opinion that we get it out sooner than later because we're getting very close on disk space.
Yep, I agree.
I think the legal opinion was in regard to requirement of use of cameras, not necessarily on recording.
I thought Bill mentioned recording, but in terms of the use of cameras, there was a policy that was put out by our education services and support team a few weeks ago around that.
Yeah, it came out.
There was a memo that went out.
can I just add one more quick thing to the downloading as a solution? Because I think this is an important consideration. If you download the Zoom recording, I don't believe the captions come with it, right? So that would create a workflow issue if we already fixed the captions within Zoom. So just something else to consider.
The other technology solution that's been made available was the tutoring software, the Proctorio. There's been a lot of discussion of that.
Proctorio is not tutoring, it's
Testing.
it's Test.
Test, the word has
monitoring.
flown out of my head.
It's test monitoring.
Test
proctoring.
Test monitoring.
Test
Bill.
proctoring, yes,
Proctoring.
test proctoring, yes, my mistake.
Yeah.
Where do we
And
stand on
that's part of our
Factorio?
CVC. I have to go back to CVC. That's part of our CVC OEI effort under that particular grantee. There was some discussion, a lot of discussion off the top of my head. I don't recall what that was and where we ended up. I'll find out.
I think the last memo about some of the Edtech elements that we're using with COVID, including Proctorio, was that Proctorio, I think, was covered through June 2022. I might have to go back and look at that memo, but it is in the COVID memos on the website.
Excellent. I don't think Jory's on the call right now either, huh?
Yeah, I know there is a sunset to the system support of it, but I don't know the date either.
Michael,
there will be.
in the chat is a good one that students have spoken out about it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of integrity issues specific to it. While folks are using it to try to ensure academic integrity, it comes with other integrity issues. Michael, you want to speak to that real briefly?
Yeah, we've actually had students speak out strongly against it at the board meeting as far as passing the funding for it. And so the board held off, and then the faculty actually spoke out saying that it was infringement upon their academic freedom. And so it's a big debate right now on campus as far as the use of Proctorio. As far as the UC system, I know that UC Berkeley is a college that is not using it, and they're looking at alternatives, but right now it is a hot issue.
We found that it takes a lot of training for faculty to understand the complexities of how to use it. You don't just turn it on and throw in all the features. You have to be very intentional about how you're using it. And that's one of the reasons it is more challenging to use in different learning environments.
Any more comments or questions about some of the Edtech, the planning approach? And just for clarification, Proctorio, as it came up, was mentioned that it's part of the CVC elements of the grants that are listed. Where's the Zoom? Is that the shared infrastructure, a part of the SIP grant?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, just wanted to clarify, double check for everybody. Thank you. Any other questions or
You bet.
comments relative to the slide that we see now?
Actually, Cheryl, one question. So is CVC going to expand its breadth to all colleges now?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
In terms of opening, further opening the consortium?
Correct.
That's true, Tim.
Did you hear that,
Yeah.
Tim?
I'm sorry, was that saying that, yes, it is going to be open to everybody, or is
Yes, that is, yes.
Okay, and do you know when that'll be coming out to the system?
It's happening as we speak. You know, so
Great.
the last I heard from Jory and the team, there were now 75 colleges who had come into the fold, you know, because there's things that the colleges have to do to play in the same sandbox. So there, I think the last number I heard was 75, and it's continuing to grow as colleges are ready.
It's really at the point where it's a rolling entry is my understanding, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Thank you,
bringing
Cheryl.
folks
That's a much
together.
better way to put it. Yeah.
The other great
So
technology resource during this period of time has been faculty training for teaching online. The @ONE Canvas approach and several other things that are being done. It would be interesting to see what the statistics are on the use of faculty training for teaching online.
And I don't know if this is a place to have that discussion, but thank you for mentioning that. That's been integral to our getting folks online. Is there more word about how that is going to be carried on? I mean, it's not technically a technology piece, but it is related. Throwing out the question.
So ongoing support for at one and faculty professional development in technology?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Is that still, Joe, attached to CVC? It's my understanding it is, but is it really part of the
It
team?
is, yeah. And I know that the team is working very closely with Barney and his crew. Um, you know, when the grants were rearranged a bit a couple of years ago under Von Ton Quinlivan, you know, and I don't mean to throw Vaughn under the bus entirely, but you know, she really overlooked the need for continued funding from for At One. We absolutely understand how critically important it is to our system, especially in a pandemic world. Um, Barney and his team and the other chancellor's office leadership folks have been really, really flexible and helpful in allowing us to repurpose some existing funds to continue to support At One. But we are going to have to work with the chancellor's office leadership to find a more sustainable funding source for that, because we can't just keep robbing Peter to pay Paul, although we've done okay. But I think everybody from Marty to Barney understand how critically important it is. So we're continuing to offer services as we have, and we'll continue to grow those as we have the resources.
Our LA Orange County Regional Consortium funded a project for technology solutions to teaching CTE online. And we found just a tremendous amount of faculty work in developing solutions for teaching CTE online. Virtualization for science labs. We also found a lot of advances in that area. It's happening probably more grassroots than anything else, but it would be a shame if we did not have some kind of a system initiative to capture that work and advance it. Because look at the governor's message about you better teach online. Where's our system support for faculty training for teaching, not just, you know, your I was going to say your grandfather's online learning, but it's almost that bad sometimes.
Yeah.
Some of the new innovations are amazing, but there's not support.
And Bill, I think that project that you mentioned actually was supported by the CTE Pathways grants that came through CVC OEI. So if that is in fact the case, then part of that grant program is really to disseminate that strategy and determine how to sustain it over a period of time. So I think that's part of it, but don't quote me on that one.
The colleges are getting directly money to train faculty to teach online, but without system support, that's very inefficient.
And it's difficult at some of our smaller colleges.
And we don't learn from each other that way. Barney, we need to do something about that.
Yeah, I think we can emphasize that professional development to support the Edtech, particularly our core systems, is critical for the classroom.
Well, we certainly got our use out of this slide.
We did. Is it time to move on?
We did.
Moving on. Moving on.
We're moving on.
Moving on.
All right, we'll do some updates on DII projects and initiatives.
Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Common ERP effort. So we'll start there. As everybody knows, we got the approval to basically move forward with an assessment with between 8 colleges, districts on the use of their SIS and how things are being done at the local level. To date, we've had 5, 6 colleges that have been participating in a kickoff meeting where we've identified how we're going to approach the meeting, who's going to be involved in the meeting, and the kind of information we're looking for with respect to the meeting. There's a couple of colleges that have not responded to us yet, even though initially, when I did reach out to them in terms of them participating, I got a response back indicating that all 8 colleges would be participating. But again, there are a couple that have not, who have yet to respond. By the end of this week, if I don't get a response back from them in terms of who their point of contact is that's going to be representing them at the college level, what we'll do is we'll probably end up moving on to a different college. In speaking with the 4CIS team, we've basically indicated that we'll be moving forward with some different colleges if they can't basically provide us the names of the points of contacts who are going to participate with the Huron group. And on this particular slide, we're talking about Huron. Huron is a consulting group that is on board with us right now in terms of working with us and what we're going to be doing. So I think we'll continue to update this group and move everybody forward. So Santa Monica College, I believe, Mike, yes, we did get a response back from Santa Monica College, but I think they haven't responded in terms of when they're available to basically meet. And so again, most everybody has been responsive. There are a couple that have not. Our focus, as you can see on this particular slide, is experience, organizational optimization, reporting efficiencies, business process alignment. So any questions so far? Let's go to the next slide. So as you can see, here we have the ERP assessment approach. I won't go into this in detail. I know we've shared this before with everybody, but I will say that the end result of what we are trying to accomplish here is, again, and I'll reiterate this, the end result of what we are trying to accomplish is a report that's going to basically be provided to us that says why we need to move to a common ERP. And that report will be used to compile the BCP and moving that forward to the Department of Finance, ultimately through the legislation and through the budget oversight committees, in hopes to basically get this funded for the system going forward. More and more this keeps coming up. I don't need to pontificate further about this. Everybody, I'm sure, understands the need for this. So if there are any questions on this slide, let me know. I'll open it up to if anybody has any questions right now. The only thing I will say with respect to this slide, January through May of 2021, that date may slip. So just to make sure everybody understands, that has the potential of slipping. I've made it very clear that we do not want to hinder the colleges as they are, amidst of class instruction right now. So I do want to say that we do not want to hinder anybody. So that has the potential of slipping, just to be clear. So hopefully it won't slip too much, but again, we don't want to hinder folks in inundating them with meetings around what we are trying to accomplish while instruction is taking place. So next slide. Is there another slide?
Let me ask you just a couple of questions on this one, Barney. This is Bill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So a critical piece for this work is defining the scope for the ERP. You mentioned business practices. That can be a narrow scope or a broader scope. Does it include things like financial aid, for example?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's a great question, Bill, because part of who we're trying to basically have a conversation with at the colleges are the chief budget officers. So that's a great point.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Except the chief budget officer doesn't work with financial aid and may not know the technology needs or opportunities. You see the...
So I guess yeah, I see what you're getting at. So in other words, are we talking with the financial aid office as well too, the financial aid folks?
Yes. Data analytics, the research offices, again, they don't work directly with the chief budget officers, but there's a lot of need for the ERP to function on data analytics and data integrity and data governance. Some of these things I know you're considering, but the research components of being able to to have data collection and the analytics tools for a broad range of things, from enrollment management to student completion.
Can I say one thing about this, Bill? I think the idea with the workshops and the outreach is that I think we don't know the answers to those questions yet, right? And so I think that's why I think it's very difficult for us to say, yes, this will be included or not, and this is what's in the scope or not. I think part of what the purpose of this project, this initial project is to determine what's in the boundaries, what's outside the boundaries, what's affordable, what's not affordable, what works, what doesn't work. And so I think we're a little too early on to give any kind of definitive answers on that. At least that's my thinking. I don't know.
And I like the idea of 8 partner colleges to be, really working closely with you, but some way to survey across the state would also be, I think, valuable. You'll capture more of the ideas, needs, and local solutions. And these 8 colleges can help talk to how that would work on the ground.
One of the things.
No, I think it's a good point, and Alex also makes a good point. But I think, Bill, to your point, and to Alex's point too as well. I mean, Alex is right, and then you're right as well too. I think as we, this is going to be organic in terms of what we're trying to put together. But I think as we continue to move down the road and what we discuss with the colleges, with everyone, I think it's going to be important to keep our minds open around whether or not certain groups should be participating in our conversation going forward. And I agree that the financial aid area is an area that probably should be discussed. We should have conversations with them. So I think as we we do meet weekly, the core team meets weekly. The meetings have been taking place, unfolding with the colleges as well too. So I think this will be a good topics to basically bring up with Huron when we meet with them this Thursday, to talk about, and we add some additional folks in here, like for instance, the financial aid office, et cetera. So I think it's good information to have that we're discussing.
Thanks, Barney. Stephanie, you want to add to that? I know you started to speak up before.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I was actually going to just call that. I thought that this transitions really well into the next slide where Barney was going to talk about the different groups and committees and everything like that they're putting together as part of the project. And this is the type of feedback that they're really looking for as we're going through this, of being able to get the feedback from the different groups to be able to understand that. So even like what you're saying right there, Bill, that's very valuable feedback, I believe, for Huron and for the team as they're going through and they're doing this process. I think that's the intent of the various different levels that of organizational teams that they've put together to work through this project.
The funny thing about our conversation right now, I was just looking at the email popped up from Michael Midkiff out of Monterey. They're looking for professional services to develop an RFQ for ERP. How ironic. So I'm responding to him, letting him know what we are doing. So next slide, please. And which is the governance
Can I just
process.
make
So,
one comment just to answer Bill's question directly? The workshops are intended that Huron is going to execute are intended to cover 4 business areas: student management, finance, supply chain and grants, human resources, and technical. Within the student management, financial aid is a topic that will be included in that discovery process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So the governance process. So I won't read this in detail. Everybody can read it. But as you can see here, the members of what the governance process and groups, who's going to be involved with them. If there are any questions around this, I'll give everybody a moment to kind of look at this real quick and review it, just a few seconds, and so take a few minutes to look at it.
And it's included in the materials that were sent out as well if you want to follow up with other questions or comments.
Any questions popping up, you guys?
Actually, can I ask a real quick question, Barney?
Yeah. Go ahead, Tim.
Yes, sir.
How does the data governance committee fit, or the data warehouse advisory committee group? How does that fit into this picture?
Good question. You know, we haven't thought about that, and I think that's a great point. I'm not sure where they would fit in at this point, but I think we may probably end up having to probably loop them in at some point. I would see them probably fitting in. Let me think.
I thought that was basic to the whole premise of the common ERP.
Well, remember, the data lake and the data warehouse has to do with data sources, data marts. If indeed we do go forward with a common ERP, depending on who the solution provider is, they may have their own software as a service solution to host it in and of themselves. Because remember, a software as a service solution entails them patching, managing, updating, keeping it update. I don't know that we want to be on the hook to basically do that. So for any changes that come down the pipe, any custom development, that's all going to be tied into a software as a service solution. So where and when the data lake, data warehouse comes into play, I can see that there may be some nexus there. I'm not sure where that may be yet, but the goal of a software as a service provider, such as the folks that are out there right now, they host everything, they manage everything, they keep it up to date. Does that kind of address your concern?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay.
I would expect that if the system decides to go forward with a common ERP, there's a direct relationship with the data governance as well as other governance conversations, so that decisions can be made consciously for the system. At this point, though, we're in the middle of an assessment, which would lead to a report that the agency would then evaluate for support of additional funding topics with the legislature, et cetera.
Yeah, I can't see that we would basically build something and then, or have a provider build it and then us hosting it, in our cloud environment and having the, the overhead of managing it and et cetera. So again, the assessment really is about why we should be going towards a common platform. And of course, obviously within that, report, it will talk about the technical requirements, the managing, the hosting. I'm sure that's going to cover all of that. But right now, good question. I'm not sure where the nexus would be at this point right now.
Yeah, it really is, I think, too early in the process to have definitive answers to any or all of those questions. They're all valid. They're all important. They all need to be answered, but we're not there yet.
But some of the newer ERPs are moving in more of a wraparound rather than a bolt-on approach. So that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Any questions? Any other questions around governance? Okay.
How do you see this connected to the governor's cradle to grave data initiative?
Well, that is such a great transition.
The longitudinal data system, the cradle to career?
Yes, cradle to career, the governor's cradle to career initiative. How does this project, the universal ERP for the system, fit into that governor's priorities?
Well, I think, good question. And I think, with a common platform, it's our goal to obviously to make the data more robust and streamline processes around submission and how we're doing it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think as it relates to the cradle to career and going forward, the data that we're going to basically be pulling from this will have a big impact. I think it's going to be a lot more cleaner, if you will. and again, I know that there are problems across the system in terms of how we report and the type of information we're reporting on. So if we can get to a common platform and a common way of how we're reporting, I think it'll clean up our data a lot. So in relationship to the cradle to career, the data coming in, going into it, is going to be a lot cleaner than what it is right now in theory. I will say that the cradle to career effort, I'm sure you know this, we still have to get through May Revise. As I understand it, the cradle to career effort is it's going through a lot of scrutiny right now. And you know, if it makes it through the May Revise, all the more better. If it doesn't, then it's an effort that that everybody was trying to move forward with, but it just couldn't make it if it doesn't get through the May Revise.
But not having high school transcript data is a huge issue for us, and it would be a huge issue on building the ERP. Not having actual employment data, from actual state income tax information, for example, is a huge. We're making things up. We're doing fuzzy matches. It influences the kind of design that we have. So it is going to be huge for community colleges because we're kind of in the cradle to career. We're kind of in the middle of needing better information on both sides. And that means software capabilities. Better data means more effective software implementation.
Totally agree with you, Bill. Totally agree with you. I do know that the cradle to career effort also entailed the CCGI effort, which is the high school transcript information, and then our e-transcripts effort going forward. Why don't we go to the next slide? I think ERP or cradle to career is coming up here. Why don't we move forward? There we go. Look at that. There we go. E-transcripts. So we're the effort around high school transcripts and our effort around our college information. So that was part of the cradle to career funding. Recap right there: 15 million allocated, 3 million for a government office to manage a project. That government office is to be established under the Government Ops Agency. I don't know what the new office will be called yet, but if indeed this does get beyond the May Revise, the Government Ops Agency will be managing the department in their agency that manages the cradle to career effort. So, and I will say too that part of the governor's budget did entail that each one of the segments would get some sort of FTEs to help with curating the data. I know that from our perspective, both CSU, community colleges, UC, AICCU, the private folks, we all advocated to basically bring on more people to manage and curate this data prior to it even being moved into the cradle to career data environment. So if indeed this does go forward. So hopefully anybody have any questions on this at this point?
I just have one thing, Barney, if I may add. There's one of the things that I think is really useful in thinking about this is that the cradle to career, as related to the common ERP, as related to the other data projects that are going on, is they're all, we have to, as much as possible, I think this is one of the places where TTAC can be so useful to the whole system, is we have to think of these all as independent pieces, but all operating inside of this enterprise data system that we have. And so I think you can do the operational analysis of the ERP as long as, and have that relatively independent of like cradle to career, but as long as you're in the back of your mind, you're constantly thinking about how does that impact cradle to career? How does that impact the data warehouse? What data would be moved into the data warehouse? But those questions, I think, can be done almost independently of all the operational aspects of this. Otherwise, we risk the thing where it takes 7 years to agree on 4 lines of a thing. And so there's a very delicate balance I think we have to play, and I think that TTAC can really be helpful in is maneuvering through letting each independent project succeed and then scoping it all inside of the bigger, larger picture of the enterprise data system we're all working inside of.
Good point. Any other questions on Cradle to Career, folks? We'll keep you. I'll keep everybody posted as we're getting ready to kick off, the budget season even further into the oversight committee hearings. So I'll keep everybody posted in where and how things are going. I do know that Lizette indicated that in terms of approvals and what's going to come out in the May revise, Lizette kind of indicated that this may happen sooner than what we anticipate in terms of what's going to come forward out of the May revise. So I know that the legislatures and the Department of Finance and everybody involved on these budgets are moving very quickly on this. Okay, next slide, please. Scenic. Good news on Scenic. We got $8 million ongoing funding to help with our budget issues going forward. So this is obviously going to help cover our overhead, the reduction in the CPUC, California Teleconnect discount. As everybody may or may not recall, CPUC discontinued the teleconnect funding. I think it was June of last year where they stopped providing us money. They were actually subsidizing us in terms of some money. So this adds back to our pot. So we have a total of what is that? 13 million, 14 million, 15 million ongoing annually for Scenic now. So this is really good news. And obviously, again, this has to get through May revise as well too. So I do know that there's been a lot of some scrutiny right now going on with this one because LAO is asking us why we got 8 million in the budget as opposed to everybody else who didn't get much. So they seem to be concerned about why we got 8 million and no one else didn't. Of course, prior to the budget being released and previous conversations with LAO, I made it very clear why we're asking for 8 million. So they just don't recall why we're asking for the $8 million. But that's okay. Lizette is handling LAO right now. Scenic is also having a conversation with LAO. Their legislative advocate individual has been having some conversations with LAO. So we're trying to sync up our conversations to make sure that the message going forward around the 8 million and what it's for, et cetera. So more to follow. Hopefully this gets through the budget, the May revise as well too, because we certainly need it. I don't even want to begin to think what would happen if we don't get this 8 million beyond the May revise. We still have circuits. We probably have about 20 or 30 circuits. Gary, am I correct? That still need to be upgraded. Is that
yeah,
about right, Gary? Approximately.
There's a rundown on the next slide. Yeah.
Okay, next slide. Oh, there we go. Look at that. 31 circuits are scheduled. 108 new circuits are scheduled. 38 routers to be replaced. So we can get the details if anybody wants those details, but we do have that broken down, but this is just a synopsis of where we're at to date.
So Barney, during the Great Recession, the federal funding through ARA, we were able to get money for the scenic backbone. We got the entire Central Valley backbone, and we had a proposal in for the Northern California backbone that just didn't get funded. There's a good chance that the interest of the Biden administration in infrastructure could have an opening for us to continue that work. We ought to at least be promoting that. I know TTAC played a big role in that work back at that period of time. Have you heard of any discussions, or are you in a place to bring this up to be sure that California and community college, and of course the Scenic doesn't just serve community colleges, it's an overall backbone, that this could be advanced?
No, I think that's a great point. And yes, there's consistent communication and topics around the Scenic board level, where both Tim and I are on the board, and where they talk about the backbone and the infrastructure. Internet 2 folks as well are on that part of that board, where we're constantly discussing the need for backbone increase or enhancements across the backbone. So it's taking place as we speak. There has been instances where the backbone has already been increased. So, but the conversation continues to ensue, and so this conversation will be ongoing. I do know that there's also a California effort in terms of the Department of Technology around internet usage in rural communities and making sure that people have access to the internet. And so again, it's a big topic for everybody involved right now around what the internet means. So Tim, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I just add that, yeah, the backbone's being upgraded. It's being extended into Northern California, up to Palo Cedro, with a loop in Northern California. So there's definitely activity going on that's going to, at least in Northern California, help out on the rural side.
Yeah. Yep. So, any other questions on the scenic update?
Real quick, Tim, when you mentioned the loop through Northern California, does that include the eastern side of the Sierras, or is that really just constricted to the valley?
Yeah, no, there is a separate project from scenic. I think it's called the 395 project. It is supposed to be extending fiber up on the eastern side of the Sierras, but no, not you know, they're partnered with scenic, but it's not scenic.
Okay, thanks.
I know that's a tough one there, Cheryl, especially if they're around in that particular area. So, and I do know that we are constantly, you know, from a board perspective, again, as a board member, I do know that we're constantly having these conversations, especially in those areas that are rural. So, you know, we're definitely pushing for this as well too. So
Great, thanks, Barney. Yeah, I mean, potentially Lassen's on 395, but then you also have Feather River on 70.
exactly.
So depending on the reach up from the valley, the same could be true for the Sierra College Center. I think that's in Grass Valley or Nevada City. So we do have some rural sitting up on the Sierras or more into the central and eastern. So, you know, wanting to reach up into those communities, not just the colleges, but the communities, which we've always known we've had patchy service, both cell and internet, and proven to be much more true than we, I think, wanted with all the COVID. Trying to teach on that side of the mountain is a little bit difficult.
Yeah, Cheryl, part of the, go ahead, Barney.
Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Part of the funding that was proposed that we asked for the $8 million was to work for rural colleges to try to get better connectivity, because there is an equity problem, you know, with rural colleges that are out on the edge in comparison to you know, colleges that are you know, in the suburbs or in urban environments.
Thanks, Tim.
The only thing I was going to add to that was that scenic, you know, again, from a board perspective, scenic, you know, and Tim and I, again, sit on the board. Scenic is very, very amenable to ensuring that we try to fix this problem, especially in those rural areas. So I will say that Lewis Fox, the CEO of Scenic, he recognizes this all the time, and so it's a big issue, and we're trying to get it addressed. So rest assured, we're trying to get it fixed. From Greg, I see Greg's question, is there a new satellite? You know, satellite, I'm not too sure. Greg, that's a great question. I don't know that satellite would be the best solution. I know that satellite is enhancing their solutions, but I don't know that satellite would be an opportunity for us to go down that path. Right now, our main effort is with Scenic in terms of physical connectivity with the telco providers, in terms of the circuits that are being established and put into place, and to ensure that we have redundancy. I can't say that it wouldn't be ever, but I don't know. I just don't know right now that you know, that if satellite is ever going to be an option for us, in light of especially in light of those rural areas. It's hard to say right now. But that's a great question, Greg.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think that SpaceX's Starlink product, which is providing connectivity up to a gig download, might be for offsite centers in rural areas, might be a their best interim solution until we can get fiber there, or better fiber there. There are some situations where it's very difficult to get there, and so that might be helpful. But have to see.
In the urban areas, the connectivity and the equity issue is that students are using mobile devices, not the internet backbone. And these are two parallel systems, of course, the cell phone system and the fiber optic system. But it's one of the major reasons that we lost enrollment during the pandemic, and a major challenge in coming back with higher percentages of courses offered online.
Agreed.
Yeah. So,
and as you can see, the last bullet point item also talks about the routers that we need to upgrade. We have some end-of-life routers that are coming into play, so we'll be coordinating with the colleges to ensure that we get those placed. Scenic obviously does that on behalf of us. That's why we're engaged with them, and that's part of why their fees have gone up to some extent, to help cover these type of costs, because they coordinate the installation of the circuit. They coordinate the installation of upgrades like the routers. They also have a NOC, a network operations center, that manages the circuits up or down, or if they see any kind of issues on the line themselves, they're the ones that reach out to the colleges to basically, on behalf of us, to see what's going on and to coordinate installation, et cetera. So,
Bill, to your prior comment.
Yes.
In the coronavirus relief package that was signed last month, there's $3.2 billion for emergency broadband connectivity. That's going to help low-income families with a $50 monthly reimbursement for internet. And would be one of the qualifications is that if the student is a Pell Grant recipient, so that should help our students. But I haven't seen that enacted yet. Or they passed it, but I haven't seen it happening yet.
Understood.
Okay, next slide, please. There we go. Finding the discussion. So really what this is about here.
Barney, before we go on to that, do we want to just quickly summarize some of the other projects that we're working on, just so that the TTAC has just at least sees the projects? It's Rick, it's on that slide 7. On the right-hand side, Barney, maybe just walk through those real quick, just so people know that we're working on them. We'll have people just read them.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. So I think the one I'm going to focus on at most is probably the CCC Applied. Everybody understands what we're doing with the data lake and the data warehouse effort. The TCO analysis, I'll mention that as well too. I'll run through this real quick. But the big focus here is CCC Applied. Everybody knows it. It's been a topic, been a discussion in the past. It still continues to be a topic of discussion to date around the issues with CCC Applied. There are mixed issues. There are mixed problems. On one hand, I hear about the CCC Apply process is a nightmare. On another hand, most recently, between someone internally to us and ironically, they didn't have any problems with the Apply process. There was a couple of high school students who are my neighbors who went through the process from a dual enrollment perspective, and they got through it within 10 to 15 minutes and did not have any problems with it whatsoever. So we get a mixed bag of the issues around the application process. So the chancellor mentioned to me at one of our meetings last month that his daughters, for taking some classes, experienced some issues and concerns with it. So what we are doing is that I'm putting together a work group around the CCC Apply, And this work group, what it's going to do, it's going to focus on what we've done in the past in terms of the reports that have come out, what we've streamlined, and I'll defer to Jennifer here in a few minutes around some of the things that have taken place with CCC Apply. Most recently, which came out a few weeks ago, if I'm correct, Jennifer, was the College Promise Grant, California College Promise Grant, and the patching that we had to do to ensure, from a Promise Grant perspective, that we can track that information and et cetera. But again, I'll defer to Jennifer to expound upon that a little bit. But what the work group is going to do is that we are going to basically focus on past legislation, on some of the questions that have been in there. Do they need to continue to be there? We're going to focus on follow-up. And what I mean by follow-up, as a student submits respectively to the college, where does that application go and when does the college follow up with the student? I'm hearing some of the complaints that I'm hearing is that there's no follow-up from the college around what the student has to do next, what they should be following up on, or et cetera, their email addresses, their accounts, et cetera. There's been previous reports that have been done by the foundation. There's some work that has been done with the Tech Center around CCC Apply. And what we want to do with this work group is basically determine what, if anything, that we can fix from a low-hanging fruit point of view. What can we get done to basically fix this process as we continue to go forward? I will say that there's also been a discussion around the bigger picture, which is what do we need to do with CCC Apply in general as a whole? Do we scrap it? Do we sunset it? And do we go forward with something different? I don't know that we have that. I don't know that we're in the position to basically look at that right now. That's something that's going to be discussed within the work group. But I do know that from a primary focus, our work group effort is going to be focused on what we can do right now with CCC Apply, what has been done with CCC Apply, a recap of all the patching that is taking place. A lot of the questions and a lot of the patching that's taking place are all legislatively mandated and driven. All those questions are a result of the legislative community in terms of asking specific questions. So the Tech Connect folks, in terms of development and putting things into place, they have to basically address a lot of these efforts. So are there things that we can basically remove now going forward? I don't know. All I know is that right now is that the work group is going to be focused on something like this. And if there's any changes that we want to basically put into CCC Apply from a legislative perspective, we need to try to get that information out by the end of April before, for any budget trailer language going forward for this next fiscal year of anything that we need to change. Jennifer, can you provide a recap of why we push out some of the things that we push out?
Yes, thank you, Barney. This is Jennifer Coleman. I oversee the Student Success Suite at the Technology Center, which includes OpenCCC, CCC Apply, and MyPath. So our most recent release for CCC Apply was actually a minor release with zero downtime a couple of weeks ago to update the term definitions for the California College Promise Grant. So students can start applying for that grant for the next academic year. It's our annual update for that tool. At the same time, we've been streamlining our release processes to move towards much shorter release windows and more opportunity for zero downtime releases. So we're not impacting the application cycles. We are also working with the Chancellor's Office to watch our application numbers. As you are all seeing with your enrollment numbers, for the most part, we are also seeing a decline in applications that matches it. We were not necessarily earlier in the year, but are now. As Barney pointed out, with the effort we have underway, we're looking to wrap up the work that has been done over the last few years of Apply, originally led by OMED and tied in with Ideas 42, the consultant that they brought in. We want to close that out and look at an analysis of where we've gone since then. We actually enacted a number of additional updates after the work concluded with that team. And so this is a new baseline to see where things stand with Apply, get that feedback from our students and our faculty and staff users, and move forward with the next phase of potential updates. We're also working on identifying which parts of the student onboarding process are controlled centrally via Apply and which ones fall to the colleges and local processes, and being able to provide some best practices, have colleges share how they are addressing some of those onboarding potential challenges and communication. So I envision that this will tie together with the work group with some potential legislation changes to address the questions and background for those, and then some opportunity for training and sharing of best practices across the system based on the difference in resources and size of staff of some of our colleges, so that we can support those who may not be able to make some of the significant changes in their local processes that may be impacting them ultimately. So our fraud filter and some of our other follow-up types of opportunities that are there, looking to streamline that as well. So the big thing is to get a baseline where things stand now, look forward at what we can, as Barney said, what we can update, given potential for some legislative changes potentially, and continuing the work that we've been doing to streamline our question structure and our release cadence, and supporting colleges in what falls to them in the onboarding process. So we're underway with that already, and we will continue to provide updates as we have them. Thank you.
I will say also too, in addition, we're putting together a charter that really talks about what we intend to do at this point right now. So I'm vetting the charter right now with our education and support teams, because they are going to be a big part of this effort as well too. As you well know, business drives technology, so they're going to be a very, very crucial part of this. So any questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a question here. You're raising an interesting question about how much data is collected when a student applies, and how much is a college responsibility to collect and report during onboarding. The CCC Apply has been used not just for the basic information needing for applying to attend community college, but for a lot of other data collection. Do you have any sense of what principles you're going to apply to actually simplify it? Because one of our biggest challenges is just to get students to apply so we can connect to them and then follow up if they don't successfully complete CC Apply, we never get a chance to do any work with them.
Yeah, so a couple things. First of all, we introduced a report available out of the CCC Apply Report Center back mid-year last calendar year that allows colleges to pull in-progress data for their in-progress applications, contact information for follow-up. So we have delivered that in terms of bridging that gap a little bit. The other thing we have coming is this late spring, probably fourth quarter of this fiscal year, will be a redesign and re-release of OpenCCC, which is the account creation piece of the onboarding suite. And with that redesign will be a streamlined offering for getting students right away into their account and into the opportunity to single sign on into other college offerings, not just Apply, that will take out the social security number and make it a shorter process and make it align with common current practices with regards to account setup. So one of the things that we're doing is account recovery and account creation are being streamlined and will entail two-factor authentication, where we will have a verified phone number in many cases for text follow-up as needed. And so I see that update as altering the landscape in terms of getting students in the door. So right now, The social security number as part of the account creation was put there. It's utilized to keep from having too much duplication, but we do know that some students get to that part of the account process and abandon and never make it even to the application for being able to pull in progress data. So that's one thing we've got coming right now. It's been in development for some time. And as we look at the pieces of the process, we are analyzing where it makes sense to get information from students. There's really a core set of data that we need from every student, but beyond that, it varies by individual as to what else we need from them. And we are talking about how best to take it from there in terms of next steps. Is it framed as part of the supplemental questions that are college controlled? Is it, do we present different segments that are part of CCC Apply, and depending on your goals as a student and your student type, whether you're dual enrollment or whether you're a standard traditional college student, what you are presented with. So really we're looking across all of those things to try and make sure that we're simplifying it in a variety of ways. One of the things that's been presented has been an analysis of Apply, looking at what's required versus what has just been added because it's a nice central place to collect the data, and starting to separate some of those things and identifying additional places that we could get that data. And with that comes the opportunity to utilize, for example, MyPath, to do follow-up surveys. You know, and we've got annual surveys that are required by workforce legislation, and colleges are struggling with how to present those surveys, confirm that they've been delivered to students, all those kinds of things. We're wrapping all of that up in the analysis as well. So simplifying Apply, but also providing tools that enhance what we've got and what we're offering to colleges with all of that data collection. I will say that we've been looking at data around time to completion of the application, where we are losing students, where we are looking to have a researcher do some additional analysis of those points for what we're looking at. And we've also been working with the foundation on student feedback on the application and the process to make sure that we're aligning with what their expectations are as far as our student audience. So there's a lot of effort going on right now. Part of what I want to commit to is the communication around all of that effort. We know from our listservs that, you know, colleges are still getting fraudulent applications, and they're struggling with outreach in the age of declining enrollments, and how can we support that? And we want to make sure that everyone's aware of what we are working on, and that we are clear about the fact that we want you all to be partners in this effort to gather our requirements moving forward.
Yeah, that's
So I
the
wanna
big issue
address,
for us, getting students to claim the account and getting them into our portal so we can connect them. And good to hear what you're talking about. How broad is
Yeah,
your,
it's going to be a big effort.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's going to be a. I think this is a good thing that we are doing. Again, I hear two sides of the story with CCC Apply and what happens or what doesn't happen with it. So it's time that we really start looking at something like this. Again, this is phase one of what we can fix immediately, if you know what we identify that could be fixed immediately. Again, the bigger picture is what do we do with you know, CCC Apply in the broader, bigger picture. I do want to address Bill Rawlings' question. I think, let me pull that up here, Bill. I saw your question here. Did you get recommendations from Aria Cabot? You know, we saw the report from him, Bill. We've been in somewhat of some contact with him. We've also invited him to the CCC Apply work group that you know, Omid had started way back then. In terms of moving forward, we'll definitely make sure that we involve, ask them, we'll reach out to them with respect to what their perspective is on CCC Apply. So, you know, more to follow on that, Bill. So does that answer your question?
Just really quick, Barney, on that topic. With some of the recommendations that were made by Ari at Calbright and that have made their way around, I know they were presented at the LEAD conference and a couple of other places, there have been changes to apply that address some of the proposals that he has already put in place. And so that goes again with some of the communications that I was talking about, making sure that the field is aware of what we've got in place and what we've got coming, so that we can speak to the improvements that are being made as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that answers the question.
Perfect, Bill. Thank you.
What's your communication network? Which listservs are you communicating on?
You know, that's a good question, Bill. I just started looking at that. We work with the foundation in terms of communication, but I really want to bulk up our regular communication as opposed to, you know, specialty types of newsletter communication so that it's just regular updates. That's something that I've been working on with Barney so that he's aware of what we've got going on, and we really just need to expand it into some of the other listservs as well. So if people have recommendations, you know, let me know. We tend to default to the CISO listserv and admissions when it comes to apply, but we want to make sure that we're involving everyone who has an interest here.
We do use the monthly newsletter that the foundation also puts out. So when there's, you know, some of these updates have actually come out in the monthly newsletter around CCC Apply. So we use them as well too, Bill.
Okay. Just I hadn't heard about this work. I'm surprised. That's good work.
Yeah. No, I mean, we just started it this year, Bill. We just kicked it off. You know, with respect to everything that's been taking place around CCC Apply and the Tech Center, yeah, that's been ongoing. And in terms of our communication, that's been ongoing. Yes. But the work group that I'm trying to establish, we're kicking it off. We just started this year because it's gotten to the point where, okay, we got to figure out what we're going to do with CCC Apply. Again, there's so many different stories around the use of it, good, bad, or otherwise. We just need to get down to a common base assessment, because I'm not sure that there's really truly been a business analysis of the application process in and of itself, so we can document all that.
Yeah, I just wanted to encourage, you know, Bill, that if you want to look at how students are using Apply at your college, that Apply, every student that uses Apply has the opportunity to fill out the survey at the end of Apply as to their experience with it. And there's free form comments there. And it's very easy to basically just say, look at any student that was dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with Apply, and look at their comments, look at what they're saying, and you can identify areas in the application that might need improvement. So that's why I would encourage that if there is a, you know, for a committee that is looking at Apply, that there should be a researcher on that committee that's looking at the data, because if there's one thing Apply has got is tons and tons of data on how students use it, how long it takes to get through the application, you know, what their experiences are with the application. There's a lot of data there that just needs to be looked at, and so that you can look at the en masse data, millions of applications, instead of just looking at anecdotal, you know, stories, basically.
Good to know.
Good point, Tim. Very good point, Tim. Moving on, data lake, data warehouse, we'll continue to evolve that to make it more robust. I'll let Alex, if he wants to provide a quick update on that one. I know that we continue to meet and we continue to work on that effort. Alex, do you want to add just a quick synopsis?
Yeah, just the only thing I would say is that we are working on making sure that we're doing a lot of analysis. We're working with the Data Warehouse Advisory Group, and we're looking to see what makes the most sense and what does the field need and what does the Chancellor's Office need to make decisions. And in looking at the universe of data we have, like in Launchboard and in Nova and other applications where ecosystem data is present, we're looking to see what makes the most sense to put in the data lake, what makes the most sense to put in the data warehouse, and how to present that. And we're starting to utilize the data warehouse functions to support some of the other grants and projects that are going on, with the intent that it become a service that's available to various pieces of the whole data ecology. So I think that's all I'd say for now about that.
That's good. Very good.
Barney, has the Chancellor's Office reestablished a research function? Did I hear that that work is underway?
Absolutely, Bill. Yeah, the Chancellor's Office does have a research unit up now. So the person who leads that up is Assistant Vice Chancellor, Dr. Valerie Lundy Wagner. So her efforts, in conjunction with visiting Vice Chancellor Dr. John Hetz, they lead up the research team along with four people right now, and I think there's one more that's due to be coming. I don't recall their names, but we have been working closely with them around MIS, around some of our MOUs, et cetera. So we do have a research team now that's fully on board, and we're continuing to involve that in, around best practices and how we support the vision for success. So,
would you be willing to introduce that team to TTAC at a future meeting?
Absolutely. Good call, Bill. Excellent call. In fact, what we'll do is we'll invite Dr. Wagner to come on board and her team to kind of give us a quick synopsis on what they're doing to date and whether some of their endeavors going forward. Does that work?
Yes. Good.
Okay, great point. TCO analysis. I'll let David give a quick synopsis on that one and really what it is. And ultimately, we're trying to establish some parameters around how we look at new technology as it relates to the education technology portfolio and everything that we are doing. What should we be looking at? How do we evaluate them? How do we move them forward? Is it something that we want to look into? David?
Thanks, Barney. As part of our activities to respond to the pandemic, decisions had to be made fairly quickly about helping our system go to a fully remote delivery profile. And those decisions were done as quickly as possible, but they didn't have a solid criteria-based decision method. So we began that immediately in August and worked on it, prototyped it through October, which helped the agency make decisions about what would be supported in the third-party tool environment. There's a decision that needed to be made by the end of December. We've now taken that forward and formalized it into a method to do a qualitative analysis about should we spend time evaluating new technology proposals. If it makes it past a certain point, then it goes on to a more rigorous quantitative analysis where return on investment and how it applies to the vision for success and equity questions and other things are being done. So we're working as a team between DII and Ed Services. This has been presented to a couple of bodies, CISOs and CSSOs. From a concept perspective, I expect that you'll see more as we move this forward. And this also might be a topic for a future TTAC, just to look at this from a change control within the agency perspective.
Agreed. And then obviously, as you want to know, the grant planning process, we started that over 2 years ago now, actually about a year and a half ago now. And obviously, David talked about it earlier. It's a grant planning process around what we're doing in the grants. With the Board of Governors' effort on, measuring our grants and the return on investment, we're adjusting to that as well too, to make sure that every grant going forward, every vendor agreement going forward under the grant, that we are measuring outcomes, that we have deliverables, that we're meeting the goals and objectives of the vision for success, especially as it pertains to technology. So we talked about that earlier. So that's going to continue again this year. As you well know, every year we got to go through this process in order to keep the grants moving forward. All our grants are in place for the next 3 years. So in terms of our planning, again, it shouldn't be too bad in terms of workload, level of effort. So hopefully more to follow. We'll keep everybody apprised on what we're doing with all the grants that we talked about in the previous slide. Other areas of focus in our MIS operational improvements. One of the things that we do have on board right now is we have some consultants on board right now that are helping us with MIS. from an operational perspective. We brought the consultants on board to basically help us in terms of putting together training material, looking at the MIS architecture. Is there anything that we can do from an MIS perspective in terms of re-architecting? Where we're hosting that, it is tied into the data lake, data warehouse right now. So there's a lot of things that we think right now, in theory, that we can begin to start to look at in terms of how we modernize MIS. So, any questions on so far? And then I'll let then we'll talk about the last one, the data harmonization, which is really an effort to consolidate.
So, Barney, this is Tim. Speaking to the MIS operational improvements, are we looking at trying to make sure that the programs like EOPS and disabled services have a more direct or a common way of putting information into the common ERP so that the MIS is continuous there?
I'm not sure, you're kind of cut out. Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I know that categorically funded programs, when reporting MIS, sometimes I know specifically I'm going with disabled services right now. It's convoluted to get it in there sometimes because they're using several different programs to manage the local operations that are not part of an SIS. And I wondered whether the common ERP would eventually, actually I had asked about this when we started talking about common ERP, whether the that piece would fold into the common ERP at some point.
Great point. I want to say yes, but I don't want to commit to anything right now as well too, because we haven't gotten completely down that road yet. But in terms of hopefully addressing your question, everything's going to be looked at in terms of what we're doing with MIS and the ERPs, and how we do it, and how things are being submitted, etc. So wherever there are some operational improvements that we can improve upon, we will definitely do so. That is part of my goal in terms of why I brought on these additional consultants to basically help us look at everything that we are doing as it relates to MIS and the reporting that takes place from all the colleges across the system. I know that everybody reports differently, so we got to get to a common way of how we're doing things, and some of the operational improvements will unfold areas of changes that we can put together. Take, for instance, training. I don't know that there's ever been a formal training from my MIS team on what and how we should be reporting on. I know that there are requirements on what needs to be reported on, but I don't know that there's been any formal training that we've provided to the campuses. It may have predated me, but
yeah,
to date,
it's been an awfully long time, Barney. I mean, those of us who've been around for a long time remember the famous Myrna Huffman, who did a lot of training regularly, but since she retired, we haven't had much. So I think the field would greatly welcome that. So thank you.
And what I see unfolding is as we begin to unfold on some of these efforts and where we can fix some of these problems, I see us having webinars, some every other quarter, or some sort of type of webinar schedule where we're talking about MIS and what we do and how we do it, etc. So a lot of that is coming down the pipe, but we have to get through the process and baseline everything right now with respect to MIS and how it is operating right now. So I mentioned the data harmonization effort. We have a lot of information that comes out from the Chancellor's office. I'll defer to Alex because I have a team in place that we're looking at and how we can basically consolidate these landing spots for everything and all the information that we have. Alex?
Yeah, the data harmonization project is really an umbrella project covering three things. One is the portal rationalization, looking at all the places where the Chancellor's Office data is represented out to the field, Launch Board, Nova, Data Mart, Data on Demand, the warehouse report server, all the different places where Chancellor's Office data is represented, and looking at rationalizing that and determining if there's any efficiencies in reducing the number of portals, and trying to be at the same time understanding of the fact that there are different use cases and different reasons for data existing in the way it exists. And so trying not to trample over the subtleties of that at the same time as we're doing that rationalization project. The other part of it is the harmonization itself, which is to make sure that if a metric is displayed somewhere in the chancellor's office, that same metric will be identical in another place in the chancellor's office, so long as those metrics have the same definitions. And that's a problem of both. Sometimes it's internal errors, and sometimes it's because the scope and constraints and the filters put on those metrics are not clearly documented sufficiently, so it's easy to understand why the numbers might be different. So we're working on that aspect. And the last aspect of that is the enterprise data strategy, and actually looking at how all these data storage, presentation, and manipulation structures work together and feed each other, and what's the system of record, and starting to look at things like quality control and master data management. So that's the data harmonization effort.
So as you can see, everybody, it's quite a bit of work to do. A lot of stuff coming hopefully this year that we'll put into place or unfold and provide enhancements or improvements to. So it's just a lot of work that we're, and together, I think, with you folks on board and this TTAC group, there's, I'm going to be looking to, look to you folks to provide a lot of information and guidance on where we're going and what we should be doing. So, I want to thank you folks in advance, because I think you're going to be hearing quite a bit from us this year as we go forward, especially on a lot of these efforts going forward. So
let me just make a couple of comments on that, Barney, because and these are things I think I know you think about, but would be useful to have in a system context. One of them is data-driven decision-making. You create an ERP to support decisions that are made. That's where you should start. So that as you're going through this, there's a tendency to collect data for data's sake. We heard some of that in CCC Apply. But then how, to attach to that data, the connection with what decisions that data supports, and how to use that data to do everything from awarding financial aid to EOPS compliance to serving disabled students to enrollment management. Data isn't just defined by the data itself, but by the decisions it informs. And then the other piece is professional development. One of the challenges of having disparate ERPs is it's almost impossible to have as my friends in CISOA know, it's challenging to do training across the system on how to use the data that we collect, and because our ERP systems are different. And it's anybody who's done a transition from one ERP to another knows that the staff are going, well, I used to look at screen AC92 to find that. Where is it now? It's that kind of training on data professional development. And I'm hoping you're thinking about this as you are, these two things as you're advancing the ERP, because these two things are huge for us to have data that's connected to decision making, and to understand how those decision makings can be informed by that data in a professional development environment.
Totally agree, Bill. Evidence-based decision making is crucial. This is part of why I'm driving what I'm driving, the things that I'm driving, because we have so many different ways of doing things. And if we get to common platforms, common ways of doing things, and especially as it relates to professional development, can you imagine not having to train so many people that we need to train on the various techniques and ways from a reporting perspective?
Yes.
If we had one common platform, if one way of doing it, then we teach everybody, and we can basically, get that notification out about what should be done. We don't have to treat everybody individually. We treat it as a whole. So even from an MIS perspective, on what we do with MIS and how we streamline the processes and some of the training material that needs to be developed, if we can get to that and resolve some of these issues. But I need to first get to, baseline some of this information, especially on ERP, especially on MIS. I need to baseline this information, and that's part of my endeavors, is to basically get all this information, get to a common way of doing things, so that we don't have to do things 116 different ways. So great point, Bill, and excellent point you brought up. And yes, these kind of things keep me awake at night.
I would just offer an example in support of Bill's points. The new library system, which is now used by 110 of the colleges, you have over 500 librarians who collaborate and work collectively on problems and teach each other about how to understand the system and how to use it more effectively and more selectively and more and just better and better. It's not so much a yes, we've done training, yes, we have a vendor who provides ongoing training, but in fact, the people who use it train each other and work together to improve how it serves our students. It's a beautiful example of why you want shared platforms when they make sense to have them, because
well put, Greg.
Teach
well
each
put.
other.
Yeah, well put. The other topic that I know I've had conversations with folks from I want to say Sierra College and in my own internal team and some other folks across the system. I think even Joe Moreau or Fred or Gary, I've mentioned this too. It's not only just the shared solutions, but it's managed solutions. We have to start looking at on how we're running our environments now. Things are not getting any less cheaper. There's a lot more work than what we have people. We have to, at some point, we have to start looking at managed services. What can we start utilizing across the system that can be shared from a shared services perspective? And as such, I'm starting to think about how we can come up with a catalog of these managed services, where some of the folks like Lassen or Feather River, where Cheryl's out there, but Lassen, where they don't have the staff, they don't have the IT staff, where they then can go to a district and or a college that's bigger, and they have it for support, for infrastructure support, for desktop support, et cetera, remote connectivity, things like that. I realize that, from a local infrastructure, there needs to be someone on site and to be able to go and run and fix something. But at the end of the day, we really have to start doing a shift in terms of how we're looking and how we're managing our environments. And that includes the shared services.
Shared services is absolutely a big part of a solution to student equity and institutional equity. Absolutely. That's the only way we're going to get there.
The other side of this is compliance. There was a recent change in the attendance accounting manual that applied to non-credit distance education, for which there was no MIS element for one of the requirements.
See, there you go. So, I mean, we've made a lot of progress to date. We're going to continue to make progress, and we can't do it without you folks. So, again, I appreciate everybody on the TTAC committee. I appreciate Bill Rawlings from the Board of Governors being here from their perspective as well too. So, I just want to say thank you to the entire team, even from the College Bias Foundation folks. They're crucial in terms of what we've been doing and some of the things that are going to be coming down the pipe about reopening, and some of the things that we're going to be providing from a technology perspective on things that are going to be available for all you folks out there in the system that are going to be made available to you in terms of how we reopen, if and when that ever comes down the pipe. I know there's a lot of talk for fall, but again, it remains to be seen. I'm sure it will happen, but again, we're starting a lot of conversation around things like that. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to the Chancellor's Office team, all of the internal teams within the Chancellor's Office, and to all you folks out there. I think this is about ready to wrap this up.
Well, Cheryl, were we going to talk about the next meeting in May?
Yeah, we can, Bill.
Barney, do you have
Okay.
The three of us
The
may need to
date?
connect on calendars and then push out possibilities to the committee. But yeah, our next meeting will be in May.
Okay.
we,
Let me look at, let me
we've
look
been
here.
doing sort of a planning and look forward strategic work. We still want to
Okay.
focus on that, or do you have other priorities for us, Barney?
No, I think this is great to basically set up for the next meeting. So let me look. I'm looking at my calendar right now to see what might be good for everybody. And of course, you know, you folks as well too. How about May 10th?
What day of the week is that?
That's on Monday. It works for me.
That's a Monday. 1 to 3.
Maybe
As a
open it up,
potential?
just tentatively plan 1 to 4. That way, if we have an opportunity, can create some opportunity for more input and dialogue.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Just at least as a holder, and then we can.
Yeah, as a holder. I mean, I don't want to inundate everybody on Zoom. I know Zoom can get tiring sometimes. So, but I see your point, Cheryl.
That works for me.
All right, folks. I
Let's
think
plan for May 10th.
Tentatively May 10th,
Okay.
1 to 4.
Yep.
Block that. Definitely 1 to 3, possibly 1 to 4. And so block
Yeah.
that into your calendars now, and hopefully you'll all be able to join us. Thank
We'll
you,
send out a
Barney, all
reminder
your
as well too.
folks, for all the input. Really appreciate the updates that we got today and the questions that were asked by folks. Bill?
You bet.
Absolutely. It was good to see TTAC recognized in the Participatory Governance Handbook, and would be nice to have we captured some of the history we had. We're one of the longest standing advisory committees, and it doesn't hurt to know where you came from and some of your past work too.
Good point.
When you have a chance, Barney, you ought to think about that so that
absolutely
it can be captured a little bit in that participatory governance handbook.
Okay, absolutely. I'll talk with you know, the powers that be that are putting that book together, and et cetera, that are going to be releasing it as well too.
And we have
we did have a foundation in legislation. I know we don't have it now, but it was an important in the first 20 years of our existence.
You bet.
All right.
Okay, so we're set. I think that's it.
All right.
Anything else from the gang for final words?
Yeah, this is Tim. I've got one small little thing. SMS texting is becoming critical to our contact with all of our students through and across multiple applications. Is there any possibility of looking at a centralized offering for SMS to try and get an economy of scale there?
Are you referring to the tool itself to basically, you know, having put that in place?
The service. I mean, we're paying gobbledygooks of money out from every college to support SMS locally, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have services that handle text message for us in 2 different formats. So.
Yeah. You know, I think it's a great question, Tim. You know, that's something that I have not. I know I've thought about it at times, especially even from a CCC apply perspective. But in terms of the whole, the service running, no, it doesn't preclude us from looking into it. The concern though that I would have though is, you know, not having access to the you know, but obviously you folks do at the college, having access to the local phone numbers to the college students. So that would be my only, you know, skeptical piece at this point is that something that's, you know, that would be a benefit to the system as a whole, and if so, I mean, does everybody have that kind of information?
So
everybody I've talked to uses it a lot. Yes.
Yeah. So in the Open CCC account, we get the mobile number, and permission to use texting. So we do have that. And then as far as the service that's going to push, I guess we're talking about what, emergency messaging, Tim? Is that what you were thinking?
That's one format that has different legal requirements. So we have two databases, one that supports emergencies, which needs to be structured differently than the productivity texting. You're right. There's two different systems.
So
And yeah, I was speaking more towards the productivity side of it. The emergency one, you can be dealing with a lot of public access on that too. But yeah, I mean, productivity, counseling, making appointments. Students are asking that we do that through SMS.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point.
I'll note that now 60 colleges are signed up, 61 colleges are signed up for MyPath, and MyPath has a messaging engine, built into it, and that could be extended perhaps to do some of this.
we have on the MyPath note, the Student Success Suite, we've been working to streamline the use of text messaging within the 3 onboarding tools. And we have worked with individual colleges who've reached out who want support for that kind of service. It becomes cost and other factors depending on what they're looking for. So we've done a fair amount of environmental scan types of research, and we've had presentations by various vendors that we can use in terms of leveraging that going forward, Barney, as well.
Okay. And I also indicated in the chat right now that perhaps that's something that we can also look at, establishing a contract and putting that in place through the College Advice Program. So JC, just so you know, I just put that out there right now. So we can definitely have some conversation with the Tech Center on some of the things that are in place that put a potential for have the potential for exploitation right now. So if not, we can look at other opportunities.
All right, very good. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, one last question. One quick question.
Yes.
David is asking for the participatory what is governance
handbook.
Where is that?
I have to go back and
it's
look.
in
I don't know
the
that it's been released
in the Board of Governors agenda for last week, the 19th, January 19th. You can download it from, just go on the Board of Governors website for agendas. It's the last week's meeting.
Would you like me to post it on our TTAC site? Is that okay yet, or?
Let me find out, Rick. Let me find out from the Deputy Chancellor.
It's on the public agenda site for the BOG.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think there's been some talk about pushing it out as well too. So I'll find out a little bit more about it as well too. I see that Cheryl put the link out there as well too.
It's a link to the full agenda, but yeah, you can access it in there.
Thanks, guys.
So again, if you want to see the recording a little bit later or catch the minutes once we have them up as a draft, you can go visit the Confluence space as well as the slides from today. Again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and to all who contributed. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.